to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Blood of the Daleks, written by Steve Linton. This is the first ever story in the 8th Doctor Adventures, a entirely new series of adventures featuring the 8th Doctor and companion Lucy Miller. Before this, the 8th Doctor was in the monthly range, a series of Big Finish audio dramas which released one story a month. However, it ended in 2021, which is a real shame. In those stories, he was travelling with original audio companion Charlie Pollard. Now, we've talked about Charlie Pollard when she was travelling with the 6th Doctor, but sadly, we had to skip her entire run with the 8th Doctor for fact that I have not listened to one story with her. I do heavily apologise for that. However, I did start off, in fact, this is actually my first ever 8th Doctor audio story that I ever listened to. It was basically the 8th Doctor having an entire range all to himself. And not only that, it adopted a lot more of the new series style. Big Finish kind of used the 8th Doctor as the gap between the classic and the new. And it made only sense that when he had his own range, they would set the series more of a new series adventure with most stories being 60-minute long episodes, but barring few occasions like this one, which is actually 2 parts, and for some reason they've released them separately. We'll look at the covers later. And this is actually the first story of Big Finishes, and the first story overall since a 3rd Doctor story called The Ghost of N-Space that were actually debuted on BBC Radio. So this was actually the first story that you could actually listen to on the radio, which is a really cool fact. So this season kicks it off, and it introduces the new companion, Lucy Miller. Now, like I said, this series is to set up the 8th Doctor in a much more New Who style. And Lucy Miller is basically Rose. She's basically heavily influenced by the character of Rose. This modern day street girl with basically a chav, and the Doctor travelling with this very mundane character, shall we say. Now, she is played by the fantastic, the award-winning Sheridan Smith. Sheridan Smith, that's the one. She's been in a lot of brilliant British dramas and a lot of comedy stuff as well. I personally prefer her drama stuff, but she is mostly well known for her comical performances in TV shows and straight to TV films. There's a great one where she plays Sherilyn Black. I highly recommend that. So that's all a bit of the behind the scenes of everything. So here's the cover for part 1, which has this really nice gloomy red with a Dalek towering in the front cover. It looks like a 60s Dalek. We'll talk about the Daleks when we get there. And here's another, this is part 2. And yes, that's Hayley Atwell. Agent Carter herself is in a Doctor Who story. I'll just use one of the covers. And like always, with these Big Finish CD covers, I print my own DVD cover. This one I've gotten off DeviantArt, with the exception that I've added in the 8th Doctor's logo from the old TV movie DVD. So it all matches up nicely on my shelf. So that's the front if anyone's interested. That is the spine. The spine, Doctor, the spine! So, sorry about that, I don't know where that came from. And that's the back. Very nice. So, onto the story. So, the audio actually starts off with the Doctor and Lucy Miller already on the TARDIS, and they're seemingly crash landing. And the Doctor and Lucy are talking to each other. There's like it's like a heated debate. It's like, what's going on? I don't know, we're crashing, probably. There's something wrong with the TARDIS or something. And when there's something, when they calm down and relax a bit, the Doctor is like, something strange has happened to the TARDIS. It seems to have opened a vortex portal and has let something through into it. Something with 2 arms, a leg, a little bit of a fast heartbeat, and has a lot of sass. Oh. So, who are you? And the credits roll. Now, in my previous stories of the audio dramas, I talked about the theme song. Now, this continues the 8th Doctor's theme from his monthly range, which is actually scored by Nicholas Briggs, the voice of the Daleks himself, who actually also directs these audio dramas himself, fun fact. It's very atmospheric, his rendition of the theme. I believe only the first season of the 8th Doctor Adventures has this theme. They replace it with a different theme in the next season. It's very atmospheric. It has a very smooth tone, something very strange, something which you wouldn't hear on TV. I personally like 50-50 on it. It really doesn't feel like part of the 8th Doctor. When I think 8th Doctor, I see in terms of his stories, in terms of how his roles are in the story, I always think like epic, or at least in terms of BBC. Like he's the most action-packed in terms of the stories that he's in. And this theme song doesn't really put that into my mind. It feels more like, I don't know, I can't really describe it very well, but I'm not too keen on this theme. I much preferred, I believe his name was James Robertson's theme from the Lucy Miller trilogy, not the Lucy Miller trilogy, what am I on about? The Mary Shelley trilogy. But anyway, the Doctor and Lucy are basically trying to work out what's going on, and Lucy seems to not really give any much information, and she says stuff which kind of seems kind of contradictory to the Doctor. They land on a planet called Red Rocket Rising, and it seems to have been, it seems to be at its very low point that the TARDIS has caught them on. There are people dying on the streets. There's rain that spikes out acid. The citizens are setting up mobs and trying to kill as many politicians as they can find, essentially. And basically everything has gone to hell. But the majority of the plot so far is the Doctor trying to work out what the hell Lucy is. Lucy explains that she's from 2006, and she was just walking away to her home, and that she just got caught up, and she thought the Doctor had stolen her, kidnapped her, but the Doctor isn't buying any of it. Lucy doesn't seem to be so surprised of the idea of time travel, the idea that the TARDIS is bigger on the inside, on many other stuff about it. In fact, later on in the story, she actually mentions that the Doctor is a Time Lord, and that's where the Doctor's like, right, okay, you really need to add that talk up, because I didn't say I was a Time Lord. So right off the bat, the Lucy and the Doctor are headbutting each other. They're very different counterparts to each other. It reminds me a lot more, instead of Rose and any of her doctors, it feels more like Ace and the Seventh Doctor. Let me back up, let me explain what I mean. With the Ace and the Doctor, their personalities are so different that if it was for any other casting decisions, you could not imagine these characters becoming friends. But because of the way the cast perform them, and the way that they bounce off each other's and use their different personalities, like imitating and performing to mix and make great friendships. It reminds me a lot of that, especially when the Eighth Doctor starts adapting the way she speaks. I especially love it when the Doctor says, "whatev." That bit made me chuckle to hear Paul McGann, the hopeless romantic, say "whatev" is just hilarious. But anyway, when they're outside, a car crashes into the TARDIS, leaving not a dent on the TARDIS. And in it is actually two people handcuffed. This woman named, what's her name? Asha, played by Hayley Atwell, and another woman who I can't remember, but she's basically the leader of this planet, or at least she was, before a mob is trying to come out and try to kill them all. And these women, they basically held Lucy hostage and tell the Doctor to distract them. And the Doctor doesn't seem to think that it's not much of a deal, that like he doesn't know what the situation is. So he does actually distract the mob in a really fun scene. Like he basically plays with the crowd, plays into the crowd, but has no idea what the mob is about or anything. So there's a great moment where they're all following him as like, this way, they're over here, and then the Doctor is like he's learning this information, but he's pretending as if he already knows, and there's a great little fun moment with Paul McGann. So we get to learn a little bit more about Asha and the woman that she's with, as the Doctor quickly gets away from the mob and meets back with our crew. What has happened is that Aisha was supposed to be an assistant for a famous professor, Professor, I believe his name is Marquez, who was this mad scientist that was experimenting ways on keeping people alive, and he had died, leaving literally no hope really for these humans. But they also learn that Marquez is his experiments cost the lives of hundreds upon hundreds of humans, and that he was a very controversial figure. And Aisha was his assistant, and she kind of defends his point of view, and they're trying to find his laboratory so that they can get a communication system, because the president, the prime minister, whatever she is trying to get a communication out to the outside world to try and get some help. And when they find a communication system, after they leave the Doctor and Lucy, after they got separated thanks to some acid rain, the Doctor and Lucy team up with another character called Tom, who is basically he's gone completely insane. Essentially, he's wearing tinfoil hats. He's constantly spouting how the aliens are going to come. The aliens are going to come and destroy us all and take over us. They're going to pretend to be like us. He's basically like a ranting madman in a sense. And he actually holds up the Doctor and Lucy at gunpoint after he scans the Doctor, revealing he has two hearts, knowing that he's an alien. But they actually hear the Prime Minister's president, I'm just going to call her the leader, her speech, to which she explains that she's been in contact with a race of aliens, a race of evil, a race of, not evil, a race of beings who have stayed to help them. These creatures are called and then the fuzzles out, and the doctor's like, "What was that? What did she say?" Lucy, it's at this point where Lucy basically accidentally reveals that she knows the Doctor's a Time Lord, and she takes the gun off Tom where they run away, and the Doctor's like, "Okay, Lucy, that's it. You're gonna have to tell me who the hell you are." And Lucy basically explains that she's basically on a Time Lord witness protection program. The Time Lords have taken her out of her own time for something she had seen, which she has no idea what they're on about. And essentially their plan is, for their witness protection, is to put her with the Doctor. And so, and the Doctor is really annoyed by this. In fact, he wants nothing to do with Lucy. Now, the actual reason why the Doctor's so grumpy here, in terms of canonicity, is that he left Charlie Pollard in such a dramatic way. In fact, I believe he thinks that she's dead. At this point, I'm not quite sure. I haven't listened to The Girl Who Never Was, the story Lucy Miller's final appearance with the 8th Doctor is. I haven't listened to that story, so I don't know. But, however, from my point of view, it kind of looks like he's grumpy because of this missing segment of him and Mary Shelley. So that's kind of an interesting little dilemma there. But anyway, so the Daleks come up and arrive as the Doctor and Lucy have such a big argument that they actually separate. Tom tries to convince Lucy to work for him, as he didn't trust the Doctor, but he knows that Lucy's human. And Lucy kind of sees the Daleks, and not knowing what they are, thinks that they are her ticket out of here, at least the Dalek spaceship. And the Doctor sneaks on board to talk to the President and Aisha to try and find out what's going on. And the Doctor tries to convince them not to get any help from the Daleks. They are evil, pure evil. But then something catches the Doctor's eye in the corner, on something on the wall, something fizzery. And the Doctor basically pinkers and ponkers with it and reveals that there's a secret door there that is being hidden away by vast technology. Something only a scientist like Professor Martez had any information with. And so he tries to unlock the door. And Aisha is basically originally like, doesn't want to help at all. But so the Doctor tinkers and thing. And when the Doctor gets in, it is revealed that there are baby Dalek mutants in there. In fact, it clicks. Aisha is not who she says she is. In fact, she is actually Professor Martez, who's taken his mind and transplanted it into Aisha's body. So basically, Hayley Atwell is one of the main villains of this story, who's been created her own breed of Daleks. And we learn about this little bit of backstory of a group of Daleks crash landed on this planet, and Martez, he experimented with them, realized that they are a highly evolutionized mutation, tried to push her own species to this mutation. So essentially, she's gone mad, and like Davros, wants to see creatures become like Daleks. And so she's been making her own Dalek mutants. Now the Daleks learnt about this and actually tried to destroy the planet, but their plans failed but it did leave the planet in such a chaotic wreck, leaving this this particular layer across the planet, which makes it very hard to use any form of scanners or communication off-world. And also, as well, it's basically led to this whole civilization going downwards in a downward spiral. And when it's revealed, when they realise that Martez is actually still alive, still making these Daleks, they actually come to this planet, pretend to be allies to the humans, and then basically try and seek out and trying to destroy Martez's creations from within. So that's essentially like, part one is mainly like the setup, and part two is mainly the payoff, as the Daleks basically come out with a full-out war with this other race of Daleks. Martez originally wanted them to have peace. You know, they're technically the same race, so they should work together, be friends. But because the Daleks are essentially Nazis who hate any form of deviation, they absolutely hate, despise each other. And so the Doctor tries to convince Martez of his mistakes. Lucy, having her own little story, being captured after it's revealed that she knows who the Doctor is, and accidentally leading her way to the Doctor. Essentially just a lot of plot points going on. Now, the first thing that came to my mind whilst listening to this is that this story borrows a lot of elements from previous Dalek stories. Daleks pretending to be good, Power of the Daleks, a Dalek civil war between two different races, Remembrance of the Daleks. There's a lot of similarities between this story and many others. The Daleks send in huge bombardment before invading. Dalek invasion of Earth. There's a lot of elements here. And essentially it's like one of those, oh, look at that, that's from that story I remember. Look at that, that's from another story I remember. That is so cool. But it doesn't feel really referencey. It feels like it's borrowing elements from those stories to create its own adventure. And I feel like it works here. What doesn't work, I think, however, is its back at the ranch storytelling. I feel like here, back at the ranch storytelling is always a great way to set up a story. You basically build up one plot line, and then when it's at the peak of interest, you then cut to the other storyline and let that build up, allowing for a great pace. But here, it always feels like any element outside the Doctor and Lucy isn't that interesting. When they split off, it's nice and fine, and I really enjoy their dynamics with other characters. And when they're together, I really love their banter and the way they just hate each other, and you can clearly see that they're slowly trying to get like each other, but they're not quite there yet. There's a great moment after the Daleks have captured both of them. They have a bit of a squirrel, and the Daleks are like, shut up! Please just shut up! As the Doctor and Lucy are like arguing over like who saved who, and saying thanks. Thank you for not trying to kill me. Thank you for letting me be captured by Daleks. Thank you for leading the Daleks to me. In that kind of sense, it feels like they're kind of balancing each other out in a sense. But any other story revolving around other characters when Doctor and Lucy aren't involved, I don't think they particularly work too well. Mendez is probably the best interesting character here, probably because he's played by Hayley Atwell, and she can't give a bad performance in her career. But the plot line around her is kind of interesting about the whole Daleks. Basically, she is a new version of Davros. Genesis of the Daleks is another one. But her plot line doesn't have a lot. Like, if that was like the main vocal point of her debating on whether creating these Daleks and seeing these other Daleks and is like, right, okay, this was a terrible idea, I need to change this, then I think that could have really worked, but it's only a small aspect of the story. The main real plot line is the people and the president, the leader, basically slowly realising, wait, these Daleks are not actually our allies. And that is, their characters are interesting, they are nice, you do know them, especially Tom, who's this crazy guy who at one point actually sneaks onto the Dalek ship and actually brings up a bunch of explosions, basically planning on becoming a suicide bomber to destroy the Dalek ship. There's a great moment in which his plan fails and the Doctor basically is like, did you try to blow us all up? Yes. Brilliant, thank you. For a moment then, I thought you did something completely stupid by accident. I really love that bit. The Doctor's really sassy in this story. It's very, very strange. It's a very different aspect of the Eighth Doctor. In Big Finish, the Eighth Doctor would get more and more and more darker. Obviously, this is because this is leading on into the Time War aspect. Oh my god, we're getting close to the Time War. How cool is that? There's a great moment in which the Daleks, basically they discovered where Martez's laboratory where all these Daleks are. Now, they planned originally to fire a massive beam to destroy it. However, that doesn't work because their guns are low on power. So they actually planned, this is how crazy they are, they actually planned to just crash the ship, leaving one Dalek, the Doctor and Lucy on board, to try and just crash the ship and kill everyone. When they do that, the Doctor actually starts calling the lone Dalek on there Fred. I love Fred. I love that little joke. I absolutely adore it. But the Doctor gets control of the ship and actually crash lands it in a way where it's a huge bump rather than a loud bang. And the war basically gets so violent that by the end of it, there's only two completely broken Daleks left. And the Doctor actually confronts both of them, basically standing heads over shoulders on both of them, and is like, can't you see? You're both Daleks, but you absolutely hate each other because what? Some little differences here and there? Why are you, is that really is it really worth it? And these Daleks, one of them, the supreme Dalek of the real Daleks, basically, on like his dying breath, proclaims, blood of the Daleks must be pure. And they both Daleks shoot a blast at each other, destroying one another. And so the story ends essentially with the Doctor and Lucy going into the TARDIS. Well, Lucy originally plans to stay there, and she stays there for a few hours until she comes back and she sees the TARDIS there. The Doctor originally plans to leave without her, leaving her to travel on Red Rocket Rising to try and help and sustain this place, or at least travel away to get out. But the TARDIS doesn't seem to be moving. The Time Lords have locked it to Lucy Miller so that the TARDIS can't land with her. The Doctor also proclaims that he can't take her back to her own time. There seems to be some sort of shield around that particular time zone, and the TARDIS is bouncing off it. As soon as he tries to land there, it lands back in its original place in time and space. And so Doctor and Lucy, in a way, are reluctantly teaming up with each other. And that's how the story ends. However, before the credits roll, we actually get a little tease of a story arc, like New Who, which has a little story arc that runs throughout the story, building up to the final episode. This first season of the Eighth Doctor has the head huntress, this woman who is, I guess she's some sort of like assassin, basically hired to track down Lucy Miller for unknown reasons up to this point. So, there you go, that's Blood of the Daleks. What did I think? It's okay. There's a lot of fun, there's a lot of great action, there's a lot of great adventure. If you're someone who originally watched the new series and wants to get into audio dramas and is really familiar with the new series, this is, I think, is a great place to start it. It's a great place to open the series of audio dramas. You'd feel right at home. It borrows a lot of New Who elements, like Lucy Miller appearing in the TARDIS and the Doctor's trying to work out how. That's very much like Donna. Lucy's character is essentially Rose, only 10,000 times better. Yeah, the Daleks are pretty good in this story, with their ideologies of perfection and purity being maintained throughout this story, and we get to meet some nice, likeable characters. However, I don't think the story is strong enough when our main two protagonists aren't in the scenes. I always feel like there's something a bit weak about scenes which they're not in, and the story really holds up on how much you like Lucy and the Eighth Doctor. Personally, I love them both, so I really enjoyed Blood of the Daleks. So there you go, that's Blood of the Daleks. So join me next time where we're in the old times, the 1980s, 1990s, I believe. I can't remember. Where Lucy meets a family relative and there's rocking about. So join me next time for Horror of Glam Rock. I absolutely hate that title. So I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta!